Now, retired SAPS Lieutenant General Sharon Jephta has been a police officer for nearly 40 years. One might say that she's seen it all. In fact, she's penned all her experiences of being a woman in blue, what happens in the front lines as well as the highs and lows in her memoir titled Serving with Integrity, Commitment and Excellence. She joins us now to take us through it. Welcome to the show. You joined the police when you were only 19 years old. That seems like forever ago. What inspired you initially?
Hi, good afternoon, William, and good afternoon to the viewers. I grew up in a community with many social ills, and where I saw the prejudice against women persisting in the community and in our own home. My mother was actually the go-to auntie in our community. She assisted anyone that knocked on our door, whether it be with a sudden death, with a health issue, with a non-support issue, with an abuse issue. She was just there. I saw her understanding the government systems, because she would go with these women to the offices and demand services for them. But I could also see that she was not able to assist herself in terms of her own abuse. And this is actually what drove me to get up one morning and to go to the Paro police station and to seek employment, because I really wanted to help my mother and other women in the community who I saw being abused. I've witnessed many times women being hit, walking around with broken ribs and blue eyes. And when I inquire from my mother, but why are they not incarcerated? My mother would always say that the police just gave a final warning. And I thought, I need to make a difference to this. And that's why I joined the police, actually to serve out there.
That is an incredible story, Sharon. Thank you for sharing. Your career spans 4 decades. You've seen the country's various political and, of course, social transitions. How has that been? I mean, especially in the male-dominated territory like the South African Police Service.
Well, I have to say that transition was definitely not smooth sailing for me as a woman in the South African Police Service. Firstly, my commanders, who were all white males at the time, they did not understand the role of women in the police. They viewed us as being the tea-girls or being the pen pushers doing administration in offices. And I had to push my boundaries at every level to do police work, to do actually the work that I wanted to do within the police. They did not understand policing in a democracy. And I was investigated various times because my commanders thought I'm ganging up with them when I was in consultation with communities and implementing community policing. And also the police implemented an affirmative action program, which they called the REOP at that time, which they were not ready for. I was placed in the program, but my experience was it should have been an accelerated program for disadvantaged members, specifically women in the police. However, this program became my worst enemy. My experience was that men in the police were not ready for the program, and they did not support it. But I had to push through those boundaries. They were not even prepared to have women in the boardroom. You must remember, women at that time, there were no women in the boardroom. So having me in the boardroom was something different for them. And they did not know how to handle me. They did not know how to use my contributions, and I had to push all the way.
Now, Sharon, without
I was also told...
Carry on.
Sorry. Yeah, I was also told that at one point I was told that I can't be promoted because I'm not the equal of my male colleague. And when asked to explain what I should do to become the equal of my male colleague, my commander could not explain to me. So I had to push the boundaries and had to ask the questions. And I think it just made the men in my environment very uncomfortable.
And we are glad you pushed those boundaries, Sharon, because here we are today talking about it. Without giving too much from the book away, I mean, what are some of the important reflections of your career?
Well, I do start out my book about my recruitment process. I reflect on it, all the tests that had to go through, all the interviews that I had to go through. I also reflect on my first station, how I was accepted or not accepted by males. I reflect on my first arrest, my first appearance in court. I also reflect on memorable operations. I think there's one specific operation that was never captured in the media, but I think it was one of the highlights of my career. And that is where I stopped the first non-violent protest that was led by Bishop Tutu and his clergymen. And I speak about my experience, looking him in the eyes and asking to stop the march. I also reflect on where the cases where I were not promoted and why I was not promoted. I reflect on a very defined moment in my career, which I know for others it might be a highlight, but it was a very low light for me because it was a board of inquiry that I faced because I lost my virginity. As if it was a hard criterion for a police woman to be a virgin. So I speak about that experience. I speak about my experience going through the election, what my role in the election was, and how I experienced the election. I also speak about my experience at Mitchell's Plain. I know that everyone knows about the station strangler, so I was there at the time when the children were murdered by the station strangler. So I speak about those experiences, about the experience going through the RIO program. But there's one specific chapter that I devote about my niche as a station commander, how I have developed myself through that, how the tools that I've gained through going through a board, going through the RIO program, how that tools actually assisted me to become a very good station commander. And I want to say that it's actually the post that I love the most in the police. If someone must ask me to go back to the police, I will only agree if I can be a station commander. That was my niche in the police. So I speak about those experiences. I devote a whole chapter to integrity, because integrity was one of the first boundaries that I've set for myself as a cop in the police, and that has guided me throughout my whole career. So I devote a whole chapter to that, speaking about it, speaking about what I've done and how my integrity was challenged, but I did not stood back on my principle.
And no doubt we will be transported through time as we turn the pages of your book, Sharon. I imagine some of the details of the things you share are harrowing because you were in the front lines. And speaking of being in the front lines, I mean, we know about the brutal killing of high-profile police investigator in Cape Town, Charles Kinnear. Just how dangerous can things get in your job?
Well, I think a police job, there's a lot of risk for a police officer out there. Police officers become targets for criminals, whether it is a criminal that is just out there looking for something, or whether it is planned. You know, whether it is organized crime or whatever they can, there's a risk for police officers to be corrupted. There's a risk for them having relationships with criminals, for attacks on police, being robbed of their firearms, or even being killed whether it being by opportunists or by highly skilled, organized crime criminals.
Sharon, thank you so much for your time and just letting us in on what we will find when we turn the pages of your new book. That's retired SAPS Lieutenant General Sharon Jephta live with us here on All Angles.